This summer we got one of the most divisive superhero movies to date, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, Zack Snyder's epic battle between DC's most beloved characters. And while there are plenty of people calling it the worst Superman movie yet, rest assured that it could have been a lot worse. This is the tale of the Superman movie that never got made, brought to you by Wendy's Jalapeno Fresco Spicy Chicken. In the mid-90s, superhero movies were in an odd place. Superman had found success on TV in both live-action and cartoon form with Lois and Clark and the animated series respectively, but his last outing at the box office, Superman 4: The Quest for Peace, was a critical and commercial failure. On top of that, the Man of Steel himself, Christopher Reeve, sustained a terrible injury that left him paralyzed from the neck down and unable to act again, much less don the iconic suit. Needless to say, the future of Superman wasn't bright. Still, Tim Burton's Batman and its subsequent sequels had been massive hits, and Batman's producer John Peters had nailed down the rights to Superman in the early 90s, which meant that the franchise still had life at Warner Brothers. Enter up-and-coming independent filmmaker and comic book superfan Kevin Smith, hot off the success of Mallrats and Clerks, who approached Peters in August 1996 about writing his Superman film, which would be called Superman Lives. Smith would base the film on the incredibly successful Death of Superman comic book story arc, having Supe square off against Doomsday, Lex Luthor, and Brainiac. His main choice for casting was none other than our most recent big-screen Batman, Ben Affleck. Unfortunately for Smith, Peters had a few demands of his own. First of all, Superman's iconic red and blue outfit was deemed way too flamboyant, so he was kitted out in a black onesie. Second, Peters thought that Superman looked like an overgrown Boy Scout while flying, so Smith had to describe all instances of mid-air flight as being motion blurs. Peters' list of demands went on and grew increasingly bizarre, insisting that Lex Luthor have a cuddly space dog that every kid would want to own a toy of, that Brainiac have a sassy gay robot sidekick named Elron for comic relief. Oh yeah, and the big final battle had to be against a giant robot spider. When it came time to pick a director, Smith suggested Tim Burton, who Peters already had a rapport with, so Burton was attached to the film. Unfortunately, he wasn't crazy about Kevin Smith's script, so he kicked him off the project, in spite of Smith being the one who suggested him as a director in the first place. Eventually, Nicolas Cage, who was in the height of his action hero success after leading big-budget action hits like The Rock and Con Air, he signed on to play Clark Kent, and while that casting is hard to imagine, it's worth noting that Cage actually is a huge comic nerd, taking his stage name from Marvel's Luke Cage and naming his own son Kal-El. But Cage's enthusiasm wasn't enough to keep this movie afloat, and it went the way of Planet Krypton. Allegedly, Warner Brothers spent $30 million on pre-production, with Tim Burton and John Peters both spending a year on the project, which Tim Burton has since denounced as one of the worst experiences of his life, lamenting the amount of time and energy wasted on a film that never got made. Peters, on the other hand, did manage to get one of his ideas onto the big screen. It was the giant robot spider, which made an appearance in another movie of his, the 1999 steampunk western Wild Wild West. If you'd like to learn more about the Superman movie that never was, check out the 2015 documentary The Death of Superman Lives. What happened? Or check out Kevin Smith's 2002 stand-up special, An Evening with Kevin Smith, where he shares his side of the story. And hey, for everything else about superhero movies, you are already in the right place. IGN.